So my talk today is called All Your Base Art Belong to Us. Hopefully that's familiar to some of you. I think it kind of dates me because that was from a long time ago. So yes, I see some nodding from us elders. But really it's about, not to be offensive, but really it's about AI and machine language or machine learning, excuse me, and Drupal, but not just Drupal, other content management systems too, and how CMSs are leveraging AI. And AI is a huge buzzword right now. So while the marketing folks want to use it, they don't necessarily know why or how, but they may throw that on your plate and say, when are we going to adopt AI? We've got to do that. So this is talking a little bit about some of the more logical ways and reasonable ways to do it. So about me. So I'm Dan Goldenbaum, the CMS practice lead for Tech Systems Digital Global Services. It's a long title. I used to work with VML with a lot of these guys from the Drupal practice who arranged this event, which is a great job, by the way. I was a Drupal developer from years back, and again helped form this team of awesome people at VML who do that work. But I also work on a lot of other CMS systems. So when I move over to Tech Systems, a lot of people think of tech as a staffing company. When I was at VML, I just used them to pull in contractors to our company. And they're great at that. That's really what they are. But there's also a global services division that does implementations as well. So essentially, if a client wants to just hand over a project, rather than bringing in people to do the project and have it fully managed, that's what my team does. And we do it over multiple content management systems. So while I'm a Drupalist at heart, and I've been using it for a long time, I also have a lot of experience with other systems, so I thought it was a good opportunity to kind of compare what everybody's doing in the AI space, of what's relevant and what's not, and what the competitors are doing, if they really are competitors. So let's start out with this. Hopefully you can hear that.
What happened? Someone set up us the bug. We get signal. What? Main screen turn on. It's you.
How are you, gentlemen? All your days are belong to us. You are on the way to destruction.
What do you say?
You have no chance to survive in your time.
It's really dramatic. It's my favorite part. Okay. Well, yeah, so thank you. Yes, I think it deserves an applause. So for those of you who remember, so in 1989, there was a game called Zero Wing that is this game, right? And that was one of the cutscenes from the game. In 1992, they ported it over to an English version of the game, and they had to do some translations in that process, as you saw, which they did a great job at. And it actually, for those of you using the internet in the year 2000, it was one of the first viral videos at that time. Somebody found it. I actually found it was somebody in Kansas City who found it. Did you know this? It was a musician or a band or whatever who found it and created the first mashup, of that cutscene, which is really hilarious. You all can Google that after the talk. So it was actually one of the really core parts of the internet when it comes to social media and viralness and stuff like that. But what's interesting about it for this talk has nothing to do with that. It's more about the translation aspect, right? Because if you think about what we're capable of doing now with machine translation, if those developers had it back then, we would never have had this. Oh my God, we would maybe never have social media. So it's kind of scary. I wish. So all right. So just I thought it'd be kind of fun to look at what they were actually translating. So it's kind of funny to see what they were trying to say. So somebody set up us the bomb was really someone planted explosives on our ship, or main screen turn on. A visual is coming on the main screen. And I actually got the translations on the right side from running it through a translator. And that's a translator that uses machine language to get smarter and smarter over time. So you can see kind of how we've evolved. This is the actual Japanese. This is the best they were able to get by calling it their friend who spoke Japanese. And then this is what we'd be able to do today. The cats one is really funny. I don't know why they call them cats, but all your base art belongs to us was actually, with the cooperation of Federation forces, cats has taken over your bases. I think it would have had more impact, but it wouldn't have been as funny. So, I think it's good to look, I just want to talk a little bit about machine learning and artificial intelligence and deep learning, and essentially how that's involved. And I think doing it from the perspective of machine translation is a good way to do that, because it kind of shows all those steps. So essentially, early translations, back in the war days when they thought they wanted to come up with an automated way to translate, were basically rule-based. So rule-based machine translation was the closest anybody ever got in those years, up until about the 80s, where they came up with example-based translation, which really looks for phrases that are similar. It looks at a phrase, it looks at another phrase, and says, well, those are similar. What's the delta? There's a couple of words that were different in that phrase. Then they extract those words, they can translate those directly, put them back in, and that's, they essentially created those patterns that way. But it was still really, really premature until about the 90s, when they started doing statistical-based machine translation. And a lot of that is what you're used to when you go to like Google Translate on the internet. It's not that different, but it is more sophisticated. Until a few years ago, when really neural networks, and deep, learning came into the picture, and this is more the neural-based type of translation that you see today, something that's far, far more accurate. So this little quote I found is, neural translation contains 50% fewer word order mistakes, 17% fewer lexical mistakes, and 19% fewer grammar mistakes. So it's come a long way. But that it sort of shows essentially how the concept of machine learning has gone from a more rule-based approach to a much deeper thing. And we'll talk a little bit about what those differences are now. So just to get like the buzzwords out of the way, if you're not familiar, so artificial intelligence is like the big Russian doll, right? It's this sort of umbrella term talking about really anything, any technology that uses or that makes intelligent machines or things, essentially makes decisions that theoretically people could make. But it's just an umbrella for everything else. And the machine learning is really, I read this thing on the internet, it's a good way to describe it. So traditional programs produce output. It's like a function has an output. Machine learning programs produce programs. And then you can use your function or program to use that to produce output. So essentially, I thought that was neat. So machine learning programs produce programs or models. Deep learning is really what people talk about when they're talking about like neural networks. And the reason they say neural networks is because it's very similar to the way we think of our brains, which is probably why we created it that way. Basically, it's the idea that, let's say there are millions of nodes, right? And you take an input, and that input tries to figure out which node it should link itself to, and then that node has enough logic to figure out what other two nodes it should link itself to, and so on and so on and so on. So it uses this huge network of little pieces of logic to get closer and closer to what it thinks it is, and it's just learning as it goes. And each time you feed more into it, it creates another layer, right? And so there's all these layers of that same thing, and that's why they call it deep. So neural networks are the neural part, and then the deep learning is that deep part. So essentially, at a high level, I'm no expert, so that's, I can't go any deeper than that, but that's really how it works. Now its relationship to Drupal is kind of interesting. When you think about, by the way, I have to say first, these little graphics I was using came from Frank Carey, who did a really interesting talk on artificial intelligence and its superpowers at DrupalCon Baltimore, so I don't know if anybody saw that, but you should go out and watch that if you're interested in this stuff. it's much better than this. So basically what this is saying is that basic machine learning relies on labeled data, tries to make labels for data. And it just so happens that Drupal's really great at that. When you think about a content type, what machine learning needs is structured data. And the more you feed into it, the better the model gets that it's trying to produce. So basically, you keep feeding inputs into that, push lots and lots of data, it creates a model, and then you can use that to make predictions. So there's a couple ways to go about that if you're interested in doing it on your website. PHP is not really good for creating this type of stuff, machine language. Excuse me, getting over a cold. But Python is, and so a lot of people use that. And so oftentimes when you install a Drupal module, you may have to also have these Python libraries available that it will use to do some of the processing. So again, the two ways to go about it are you can do that, right, where it's actually doing the machine learning on your server using those Python libraries, or you can use something like this, right? These guys have models. So hitting the easy button there, AWS. Oh, thank you so much. Sure. Totally forgot to get that. So AWS and Azure are really trying to lead the way on coming up with services where you can just feed it and get back an answer. And of course, TensorFlow, Watson, Research Watson, some of these other ones, Clarify, Google Machine Learning, and even Deep Learning, which is a brand agency that created, that uses models to create logos. So apparently you can feed it some information, we'll create a logo for you. I thought that was funny because this is a logo slide. But basically everybody's trying to get in the game on that stuff. But we're gonna talk about some Drupal modules that leverage these things to get some real results and do something useful with it. So just a quick thing on marketing and adoption of this stuff, because again, these are big buzzwords right now, and it's going to come across your plate at some point if it hasn't already to start adopting AI. Well, it's still in really early stages. So AI is poised to revolutionize marketing and lacks understanding and adoption. I think this is general consensus when you look at Gartner and Forrester and whatnot. Is that the fine print here is 80% of marketing executives predict AI will revolutionize marketing. 26% have a very confident understanding of AI, and 10% are currently using AI at work. So that's pretty recent. These are recent results. But the important thing over here on the right is that as it emerges, a lot of it's going to be in communications and technology. So again, that relationship to content management systems is pretty significant. There's lots of things we're going to use in marketing technology specifically around AI. So the CEOs are saying that 14% have no interest, 35% are on the radar, 25% in mid or long-term planning, 21% in short-term planning or actively experimenting, 4% have already invested and deployed. So again, very early stages of adoption, but the budgets are getting bigger for AI. So I think that's the most significant stuff about the stuff that Forrester and Gartner do is when you look at those reports, it's going to tell you where people are going to be spending their money because all the CIOs go to those guys. So that's significant as well. So hopefully that paints a little picture for what AI is, right, in the depths that I can explain it, and where this is probably going. And we all know this is part of our lives right now, right? Almost all of us are probably talking to Alexa on a daily basis, and then we don't even know when sometimes we're talking to chatbots or not, for a second, but then you realize. So who's doing this right? These are probably all things you guys are familiar with. So essentially, we've got Airbnb over there on the left. So 60% of bookings leverage Google Translate API for reviews and host communications. And that's a pretty big deal because a lot of Airbnbs, I guess, people get overseas and then they need a way to talk to the host in Italian. So Netflix, as we all know, has been trying to figure out what movies we like for a long time, and they're starting to get better at it. There's still some weirdness there, but I have seen it improve. I'm interested if anybody has an opinion on that. Instagram uses this stuff to fight cyberbullying, which is interesting, and delete offensive material. So that's some of the things we'll see more and more as we go through this presentation, is ways of evaluating imagery and content to reduce porn uploading, or just and cyberbullying. Like, that's a big deal, teenagers and stuff like that. So this is important. And then over on the right, some of you may remember Mullum. I don't think anybody uses Mullum anymore. I know Aqua stopped supporting it, but this was like an early capture use in Drupal where it used machine learning to get better and better over time. And essentially that little diagram up there is the one that shows how it would decide whether to outright block something because it knew that was a bot that it had seen before, or it would make a decision right there to say, is this really you? It would go that step further, or it would just say, okay, this is okay. I think you're good. So that was a sort of an early adopter, but a good use case from a Drupal perspective. And then there's the bad. Has anybody heard of this? This is Tay, Microsoft's answer to Google's Go. So in 2016, days after Google's Go AI triumphed against the human world champion, essentially they'd come up with like an early kind of Alexa type thing that you could tweet to. Microsoft launched their own version of that. And I don't know if you can read the bottom thing, but essentially somebody went in and created a script or whatever to teach Tay how to be racist and mean. Because that's how this works, right? You feed it information, you're essentially teaching the model, and it's learning everything you're giving to it. But if you hit it a million times, it's the only voice you're listening to, right? So it's a terrible thing. But it was kind of interesting that if not used correctly, this stuff could be really damaging, clearly. So there's some warnings in there as well. So future trends in AI. I mean, this is mostly subjective. I think just based on what I've seen the other content management systems doing and a lot of the buzz around this stuff, I think personalization will get a lot better, and that's significant for the CMS space. If anybody's using Lyft or whatever in Drupal or other things that can do personalization, it's largely rule-based, and what you can do in Sitecore and AEM and things like that. A lot of people have only gotten to that phase where it's rule-based. But I think personalization will get a lot smarter and use a lot more data as it becomes available to make better decisions around what you really want to see. And hopefully it's the right thing, like on Netflix. And then enterprise-level content centralization is important. So like every client I feel like I talk to is trying to figure out a way to deal with their content. Because across all these different business divisions and whatnot, they've got a lot of people creating it, and they've got maybe like 3 people publishing it across their enterprise CMS platform, or they try to distribute that, and then it becomes a big mess. So I think we'll use AI to make logical decisions about what's available for publishing, what's the right thing, what's the wrong thing, so that we don't rely on that small group of authors who end up doing all this work for large corporations. And then also automation of content distribution. So, it's a big effort to actually get relevant content out on a regular basis. So, especially across all the different channels. And while the CMS systems try to do that, make it easy to do that, I think there will become more robotic ways of doing it in the future. And I just mean future, I mean like next couple of years. Like this stuff's pretty much happening now. So, I want to talk about what Adobe is doing. So, some of you are familiar with Adobe products. So there's Adobe Experience Cloud, which is like all their different products, which covers analytics, Target, which is content testing and personalization, and all the other stuff. But they have Sensei, which is their answer to Google's models and Watson and everything else. And they use that to do a lot of features in AEM, which is their content management system. Adobe Experience Manager. So I want to walk through these real quick because if you look at what's possible in Drupal right now, a lot of these things are covered if you're leveraging the open source modules that are out there. But there's still ways to go. So if you are a community contributor, there's lots of cool stuff to do if you're looking for a good project. So it's really small. I don't know how to read these, but okay. So auto tagging is a huge thing. So it's a big effort to know what the right tags are to add to content, especially if it's user contributed. So auto tagging is huge, and we'll look at how that works in a little bit. Oh, video auto tagging. So that's a little tricky. That's uploading a video. It looks at all the frames. It analyzes them, picks out what it thinks is in those frames, just like it would an image, and it gives you a list of tags that you might want to use. Image captions, that also relates to alt text, so auto-generating alt text based on what the computer thinks is in the picture. There's and then all the image processing tools like cropping, finding the right focal point, right, of the image, or guessing, and then asking you if it's correct. Image cropping, face identification, all that stuff. Adobe's doing this now. Logo detection, text detection, copy space, so it's like cleaning up your content automatically, and not relying on your WYSIWYG to do it. Just a couple more. Image quality, right? You can enhance image quality. It's pretty easy. And then whatever that says. So I couldn't read that last one there. So this is the stuff. I think it's just a good baseline, right, for what we should be able to do in our CMS systems, and potentially more. So let's look at what Drupal modules are using artificial intelligence. So, and definitely if anybody has heard of any of these or already researched them or used them specifically, I'd love for you to chime in or have a discussion about it and see how well it worked out for you. So auto tagging is again something that Adobe says they do pretty well. We can do that in Drupal with a couple of different modules: intelligent content tools and ML tag. And I'll go into all these in more detail. But then there's metadata. This one is kind of like I'm going to put an asterisk next to that because they don't have a Drupal 8 module for it. And I don't know how well Open Collide is still being adopted, but this was a big deal with Drupal 7 for a little while. Image and video, the Google Vision API. I definitely want to spend a minute on that. I think that's just very cool. And you know, hopefully, again, if anybody thinks of applications on sites that they're currently working on and wants to talk about it, like this, that would be fun. Content optimization. So again, intelligent content tools is kind of multi-featured. So this is more around stuff like when you have to create summaries, right, for multiple channels, like maybe whatever, social media or something like that, or Twitter or something, and you want an abbreviated version. Sometimes a little ellipse, just using the first paragraph does not work. Right? This can come up with a more intelligent version of what it thinks you're trying to say. Kind of like the way Google, when you search in Google, it doesn't just bring you back the first, what's in the top of the page. It brings you back the thing that's most relevant and shows you the snippet of it. Marketing automation. This is SendPulse, which is really a company that has a way of optimizing how you're sending emails. So there is some of this stuff, but I don't know. There's not a whole bunch in that space. Chatbots, again, if anybody's done chatbots on Drupal sites, I'm really interested to hear what you used, whether you did it from scratch or whether you used one of these modules. I think Drupal chatbot is probably the best one in this case, but I'd love to hear feedback. And then in terms of optimizing search, I mean, honestly, from what I know, just using Apache Solr and all the programming you can do around that to create machine learning or have your search get smarter and smarter is something that's more of a custom thing. There isn't a Drupal module you can drop in to do that. But I have Drop Solid on here because it's a company that offers a service that can do that for you. And I think you have to host with them or something. But and I don't know, Acquia Search may do that. I'm not sure if it does or not. Again, feedback, totally welcome. Love to hear people's thoughts. So, talk about auto tagging first. So, intelligent content tools is great because it basically analyzes articles. It chooses the most relevant keywords and tags for the article based on the content. So that's the first thing it does. Is it'll scan your body content or whatever, and it'll say, these are probably your best tags that you'd want to associate with it. It also creates summaries. You can do that. And then it looks for duplicate content on the website. And I think that's most relevant for user contributed content. You don't want stuff to be posted multiple times. ML tag, I saw that on here. I mean, this is kind of interesting. It's more of like a homegrown version of it. So that essentially it's a bunch of Python. It's a Python library that does all the machine learning on your server, and it does auto tagging based on both implicit and learned tags. So it's kind of cool. It will actually try to learn what is most relevant to your site based on all your content and based on past activity. Excuse me. Or it can do it just by looking at that content directly, and you can choose which way you want to use it. Definitely relevant. So for images and video, so again, the Google Vision API is really powerful, and I imagine there will be patches for this, or they'll come out and update this with all the new features they add. So keep an eye on that. And I have all the bullet points just listed out here. So on upload of image, it scans the image and returns relevant keywords. I mean, that's huge. You can use that for labeling, so you can, tags. So you can tag it, and you can essentially create Instagram with this module. You can automatically tag all those photos. You can categorize them that way. You can use the keywords that come back, you can grab alt text from it as well. So you can specify it to be alt text, and it'll just say what the image is, which is really great, because if you've ever had to go back and add all the alt text to all the images somebody uploaded for a website, it's a big pain in the butt. And to get people to do it in the first place is really hard, unless you just make it required. But it's a good alternative to that. So the safe search feature is cool. It scans each image on upload and determines if it is porn or has potentially offensive content in it. And there's an interesting demo you can see out there on the internet that basically they have a picture of David, and if you upload the backside of David, like the statue, David, if you upload the backside, it goes through and it's fine, right? If you upload the front side,
okay.
What's that?
Butts are okay.
Yeah, butts are okay. I mean, unless it learns different, right, over time. But the front side's not okay. No, it sends it back. Doesn't like that. So yeah, it's pretty funny, right? Like, the decision is made off of input, because you can say whether you agree or not with what the result was, and then that will be factored into the model, and it's like getting smarter and smarter theoretically. So it could change. Maybe butts are not okay later. So emotion detection detects emotion from images, which is interesting. So if you don't want sad images to be uploaded, you can say, no, that's too sad, and I think it's usually facial recognition, I think, is how it does that. But it's an interesting thing to play around with. If you go out to the Google Vision API website, of course, there's a demo you can use to just try different things out, and it's really interesting what the results are. So you can group images by prominent color, which is really cool. Think about what you can do with that in terms of creating one of those mosaics or something. There's gotta be something you can do with that. I don't know what else you would do with that, but again, you could definitely create Pinterest or something. Does not store content locally before scan. That's important because if you're doing it, like if there's sensitive PII or something like that, if there's some reason why you wouldn't want to have porn on your server, and there's potential for people uploading it, which is pretty much all the time, I guess, then it doesn't actually put it on there. It sends it to the service before it does anything with it. So it's a pretty smart little module. And I imagine just based on the way it's supported now, it'll just get better and better. So, chatbots. And I'm kind of doing these, like I have a slide for all of them in that list, but I'm just hitting the most important ones. So, again, chime in if anybody's used this stuff, especially with chatbots. So, there's some different options. Essentially, the chatbot API is more like a, what do you call it, a helper module. Sort of, it's just to help you integrate with the existing things that you need to create a good chatbot, like Dialogflow, which used to be API AI. If anybody's used that, essentially what API AI was and what Dialogflow is it's a way to create the initial logic, like the script for what the responses should be to certain keywords. So, I mean, in a very easy way to explain it. So that's the initial step with this stuff, is you have to go in and create that. Whenever you detect this keyword, what is going to be the response, and then you can create these sort of trees of responses that your chatbot may do. So that's one thing about Dialogflow, but then there's also the machine learning aspect of it, which you can turn on or off. And you can make it get smarter over time and make different decisions based on that model. Or you can just say, I want my interns to make all those decisions, and they can go in and update it all the time based on what they're seeing come through. Right? And that can be, of course, text-to-speech, or that can be what people type in, or whatever. And then Drupal Chatbot is, I think, the recommended one here. So if you just want to play around with the chatbot on your site, Drupal Chatbot is a simple, lightweight module. It doesn't require any dependencies and just sort of hooks you up. And all you have to do is go to Dialogflow and set up that tree, like I was talking about. And it's just a cool way to try it out, get up and running. But the other ones are more of a little project to get all that stuff working. And hopefully, let me get my internet connection working real quick. Try to show you this. Works. Okay. So yeah, this is kind of cool. I think this is a Dutch company, but these are some folks who set up a little chat module for their website using the stuff we were just talking about. So this is actual Drupal. This is the end result of these things. So eventually they want you to ask questions about their company. What is your company name? Can't really see what I'm doing. Oh, I like that. What should we ask it? Where are you from? So that's working, and that's real Drupal modules creating all this stuff, more or less. The interface, of course, would be custom, and you'd have to get all fancy with that. But it's cool thinking that you could set up Alexa, app or stuff using some of these technologies. And this is we'll make it an easy way to create an interface for it in Drupal. Sorry, where do I go now? All right. Okay. I'm going to skip that one. So I already talked about that. So the marketing automation piece was, now again, Adobe does a lot of this stuff as well. So this is a place where you'd be kind of catching up in the Drupal world. But SendPulse is a company that tries to figure out exactly what should be sent and when to people. So if you're sending out emails, it does the logic that figures out, okay, this person did this on the website. When do they really open the email? So it looks at like open times and things like that. It says, well, they only do it at night, or they do it first thing in the morning, or Saturday, whatever, and then it tries to time the sending with it, which is some pretty sophisticated stuff. But that's the SendPulse service that does it. You'd have to be signed up with them. But it is an important thing. It's something you get from big proprietary systems like Adobe's products, but you could get on slightly cheaper in this realm. Yeah, and then again, with search, the only way I know of really leveraging the good aspects of Apache Solr, search, and Drupal, and getting all the machine language part of it, making it sophisticated, smart searches, is by using a service like Drupal. So, there's nothing on this slide, but it's supposed to say thank you for your time. So yeah, again, hopefully I was able to help those who didn't already know what's going on in machine language and AI and deep learning, what the trends are and where that's probably going. And as developers and site builders, there's a lot you can leverage already. I think especially in the image realm, these more common things we're doing all the time. And there's already modules out there, but there's tons of opportunities for contributing to the community as well and making that better. So you can be on the cutting edge if you learn it now. That's all I got. Thank you. So do you have experience using any of these modules? Any stories from the trenches? All right. Well, it is early adoption phase, so let me know. Cool. Well, I think I'm giving you 5 minutes back to your agenda.